Thanks, John. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the June 25th River Falls City Council meeting. First thing we'll do is stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Christie, can I have a roll call, please?
Bierstedt.
Here.
Bjork. Carroll. Downing.
Here.
Morissette.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Odine.
Here.
Okay, next we have approval of the minutes for the May 28th meeting.
I move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments on the meeting minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next we have approval of the bills with Mr. Bierstedt.
Mayor and council, I move to approve payment of bills in the amount of $2,142,143.23, subject to the Comptroller's review.
Second.
First and second on the bills. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next move on to public comments. If there's anybody on it says anything like to say, come on up. Everybody will have 2 minutes. So just come on up and sign in and name, address, phone number.
I'm Cecil Bjork, 320 Church Street here in town. I'm here to talk about quickly 2 issues that are on your agenda tonight. One is agenda item number 5, which pertains to the Planning Commission. I agree that you should maybe change the makeup of the Planning Commission, but I think you should follow Chapter 6223 of the state codes. I think it would be neat to have your young attorney over here redraft your Planning Commission ordinance so it meets state statutes, which today it appears to me it does not. Once that is done, I think it would be good if that same attorney would have a joint meeting with both the council and the Planning Commission to review what the Planning Commission is responsible for. That's item number 1. Item number 2 is an issue that's down towards the end of the agenda, is approval of a development located out south of town. I forget the name of it, it's Susu or something like that. I really don't understand why that comes to council for approval without any type of public input. It's an area that's zoned multifamily, and yet it doesn't meet the criteria. It doesn't meet setbacks, it doesn't meet parking, it doesn't meet any of the criteria that you have in your current zoning. Now, if you're going to make it a planned unit development, I can't find anything on record that shows you what the criteria is for a planned unit development if you're going to make that a piece of land a planned unit development. It's a single building. It doesn't seem to me it qualifies in any manner for a planned unit development. I think you really should take a hard look at that area out there, and if you haven't visited that area, you should.
15 seconds.
If I'm 2 minutes up, I'll sit down.
4 seconds.
You know, I drove out there after reading this in the paper. There's an apartment house out there today and it has children in it. They have no place to play. They play in the parking lot and in the streets. And that's the same thing that will happen if you approve this thing. All they have to do is 4 units less that they're building and it will meet the criteria, the standards of the city of River Falls.
Time.
But why? Why not? Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Good evening. My name is Mike Noreen. I have 2 items tonight. One is the approval of the interim forester, Troy Conley. I think it's a great choice. He's got skills and he's got the right attitude to do a good job. So I hope you approve it. The second one would be the CIP. The city has been leaders in sustainability for a long time, whether it be sustainability or renewable resource development, whether it's community solar, whether it's green block development, or renewable River Falls. It's put us on the map. But to think that we are that far ahead of other communities would be a mistake. With that, the council has approved in the CIP for 2024, $200,000 for solar on City Hall, and in 2025, 350,000 for solar on the public library. And I encourage you to follow through with that commitment. With the City Hall, we have a new roof, which I know makes people nervous to put solar on, but that is what best practices are. You could put solar on without roof penetrations. If that doesn't work for you, we have other options. You can put it on, make it carports, whether it's on the city fleet or for the public. If that doesn't work, we have pavilion options out front or on the sides of the building, where we have many Wisconsin companies that can do that work. So it's in the CIP, it's been approved. And as we know, climate change is real. It's happening. It's impacting us. It's impacting our kids. It's going to impact our grandkids.
15 seconds.
So it's a matter of what do we want to leave for an inheritance. So I encourage you to follow through on that CIP funding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Lance Hovland, 310 West Charlotte Street. As mentioned, the city, its people, and the surrounding community have done a tremendous job in taking on a leadership role in sustainability. However, much of this work is being done by various nonprofits in the area and is lacking cohesion with the city. And so a climate action plan would really help provide a guide to focus our efforts as a community. In addition, developing a climate action plan will potentially help us secure funding from the state. The Wisconsin Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy received a $3 million planning grant from the EPA to lead the development of a priority climate action plan, a comprehensive climate action plan, and a status report by mid-2027. The priority climate action plan will leverage previous state efforts as well as tribal climate plans and local government climate plans to identify actionable, impactful, and equitable strategies for emission reductions in the state. This plan will cover the entire state projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. To be eligible for the funding, implementation activities must be described in the Priority Climate Action Plan. The EPA will release additional guidance regarding implementation grants in fall of 2024. So coming up. So the city needs to move on developing a climate action plan. So to start, we need leadership-backed commitment. This must be across departments in the city. Create a planning team, including city government, community development staff, community members, businesses, and sustainability organizations. Understand where we're at and where we need to go. Create some specific greenhouse gas emission goals and targets.
15 seconds.
And determine the steps needed, implement the plan, and continue to be transparent. Just a reminder, the University of River Falls is developing a plan right now, and so the city could piggyback off of that quite easily. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. I'm Dana Linscott, and today I do not appear before you on behalf of the city's homeless or low-income residents. I appear on behalf of residents living near the city yard waste site who feel their pleas for help to the city administration and council have fallen on deaf ears. The current city yard waste site is by the city's own definition a public nuisance and health hazard. It violates federal, state, and city laws. During heavy rains, it dumps liquid nutrients into the Kinney, and when compost is ground twice a year, biotoxins are spread to the residential neighborhoods surrounding it. I've been unable to find a single other municipal compost site in Wisconsin or Minnesota which is located in a residential area. Both the city manager, Simpson, and former utility manager, Stifter, acknowledged that it is a health hazard for anyone living nearby. And anticipating a negligence lawsuit, the council met in closed session in 2021 on the compost site. The state licensing authority has repeatedly warned the city that the compost site can spread dangerous toxins to surrounding neighborhoods, and the testing done by the city confirms that it has. There is no good reason the public's health must be compromised in order for the city to dispose of yard waste. When I was working with Mr. Stifter, he anticipated the site would be moved to the property next to the dog park by now. Yet according to his replacement, there are no plans to do so currently. It's irresponsible to continue to use the current Yardway site, and I'm happy to assist in creating a safe and less costly site at the dog park property. Doing nothing is no longer an option. According to the state of Wisconsin, the current site has been unlicensed since 2017 and is vulnerable to an injunction. Let's work together to avoid the inconvenience to residents which that would create. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hello. Good evening. My name is Robin Bowles. I'm at W7231 730th Avenue. And though I don't reside within city limits, I also manage a local business that's been in downtown River Falls for 50 years, and I'd luck to live beneath. With the recent changes at the city, I want to encourage the council to consider writing a separate job position for city forester. I believe that we need to ensure that there is an expert on staff to protect this beautiful and vital natural resource. Urban forestry is challenging right now with emerald ash borer, and we need to make sure we invest to protect our trees. A full-time permanent position would ensure that we follow the terms already established through DNR grants requiring transparency, community input, and following a plan established by experts. I would also like to encourage the City Council to reinstate the Tree Advisory Committee, which has been suspended. Thank you.
Hello. Patricia LaRue, River Falls. For better than 9 years, I served on the River Falls Park Board, 4 of those years as its chair. As chair of the Park Board, I served on the Plan Commission. My term on the Park Board expired in May, and I reapplied for the position. When my name didn't appear on the City Council's agenda for reappointment, I contacted the mayor and was told by the mayor that he was talking to someone else about the position, but he would get back to me. When he didn't, it was like a punch to the gut. Later, the mayor and I had a very nice conversation, but I am still left without a good understanding of why, after 9 years, I was not suitable for reappointment to the Park Board. The vacancy still exists. With that, I thank the mayor for trusting me to serve 2 years on the Kinney Corridor Committee. The Kinney Corridor Committee was presented to the public as the most significant plan in the history of River Falls, and I am grateful to have been a part of that. For appointing me to serve on the Park Board, and as its chair, allowing me to work on the Glen Park and Hoffman Park master plans, including the design and construction of the Glen Park Pavilion, rollout of the outdoor recreation plan, and giving River Falls a dog park. I'd like to thank him for allowing me to serve on the Plan Commission during the time of drafting the comprehensive plan, the expansion of housing and welcoming new families into our community, and the Mann Valley Business Park development. Considering my involvement in the Park Board, Kinney Corridor Committee, Plan Commission, and the steering committees for the comprehensive plan, outdoor recreation plan, and all the ancillary workshops, I only missed one meeting in 9 years, and that was the week my mother died. If asked, how did you do? I can say my best. I very much enjoy being part of and serving the River Falls community. As the vacancies remain open on both the Park Board and Plan Commissions, I will be asking the mayor to reconsider my appointment to either. I understand that Matt Jancourt has replaced me on Park Board. He's good, and he'll do a good job. Thank you. Now I got to get to a 6th grade baseball game.
Hi, my name is Tanya Schmidt. I live at 622 West Elm Street, right here. And I am asking you to please continue the Powerful Choices program. It has been incredible in educating residents around energy efficiency and sustainability, and in bringing together a number of speakers and sustainability-minded businesses and nonprofit organizations to connect and grow and learn. It has also done the same for youth. And I'm just urging you not only to continue it, but to expand it, because it really is the way of the future for all of us. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything?
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment. I just wanted to recognize and thank Melanie Walden. She is a local beekeeper and owner of Lazy Goat Studios, and she was our presenter for our first educational event for the River Falls Bee City Committee, which I have the privilege of being the chair. I also wanted to invite people with children to our event this weekend. It's the opening of the Story Walk, and that'll be at Grodeshare's Garden in Hoffman Park. And I'm going to just read the description real quick. We're going to meet at the Community Garden in Hoffman Park Saturday, June 29th at 10 a.m. Library staff will take you on the Story Walk, reading the book and walking you through the activities. Grodeshare gardeners will share information and produce from the
Hearing and open up a public hearing on the annual liquor license and beer license renewals. This is a hearing and disposition by motion. If there's anybody in the audience has anything they'd like to say about this, now would be the time. Okay, we'll close the public hearing and reopen the council hearing. And first thing we'll do is take a roll call of our, make sure our businesses are here. So we have, let's see, Aldi's.
It's right there.
Right, Aldi's right here. Burrito X. Item. Dollar General. Thank you. Family Fresh. Okay. Holiday Station. Thank you. Patty's Pub and Box Tea House. River Falls Baseball Council. Okay. And Tarnation Tavern. Yep. Okay, perfect. So if approved as a group, all the applicants in that group are considered approved without modification, contingent that all licensing conditions are met at the time of issuance. If you wish to modify the license, including amending the premises description or adding any conditions, that license will need a separate motion. So let's go on to the motion. So suggested motion number one is grant renewals for the, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
First.
So I need the Aldi and the Holiday Station agent to come up, please, and Scott will grill you a little bit.
Mr. Is it Gust?
Yes.
Gus, I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to talk to you prior to, but I ask every agent, when they become a new agent, 3 basic questions. And I just need you to affirm those for me, if you would, please. Do you understand the role of an agent?
I do.
Okay. Do you understand, do you possess a responsible server certificate?
I do.
Okay. You understand that if an alcohol-related violation would occur, even if you're not there, you are the one responsible?
I do.
Thank you. I'm satisfied, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll move on to motion one is grant renewals for the combination Class A liquor and Class B beer licenses, contingent that all licensing requirements.
Class A.
What did I say?
B. Class A and A.
Oh, I got Class A and B on mine. Oh, I'm sorry. Class A liquor and Class A beer license. I read the B in beer.
Don't we all?
Contingent that all license requirements are met at the time of issuance. This would be for Aldi's, this would be for Dollar General, this would be Family Fresh, and this would be for the Holiday Station store. And I'll take a motion on that.
Mr. Mayor, move that we grant renewals for combination Class A liquor and Class A beer licenses, contingent that all licensing requirements are met at the time of issuance for Aldi Store 49, Dollar General, Family Fresh, Holiday, and Station Store number 8.
So,
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next one is grant renewals for the Class B beer licenses, contingent that all license requirements are met at the time of issuance. And this would be for the River Falls Baseball Council. And I'll take a motion on that.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the Class B beer license for the River Falls Baseball Council.
Second.
First and second, questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next is motion 3 is grant renewal for the Class C wine licenses, contingent that all licensing requirements are met at the issuance, at the time of issuance. Before I take a motion though, I'd like to, could the agent for Ptaceks please come up? Oh no, I gotta wait, I'm sorry, that's my problem.
Yep.
I gotta wait till we get to that. I'm ahead of myself. This will just be for the River Falls, this will just be for the River Falls Baseball Council.
For wine.
And I'll take, yep, just wine.
I'll make the motion.
Yes.
Second.
First and second, questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Next one is grant renewals for the combination Class B liquor and Class B beer licenses, contingent on all licensing requirements being met. This is for Burrito X, Patty's Pub and Boxty House, and Tarnation Tavern.
I so move.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, we move on to, is that me?
That's you.
My phone, sorry.
Item 3.
Request for combination Class A liquor and, oh, I apologize. So, I thought I had that off. Request for combination Class A liquor and Class A beer license for Ptaceks Family Market. But first, this is one, before a motion comes up, hang on a second here.
Rafe Ptack.
Yes.
This is on the other page.
No, I was thinking we were already past that. Okay, could Rafe come up? Sorry, Rafe. And you,
I have a conflict,
Yep.
so.
I
Ms.
have a
O'Dean's
conflict,
gonna-
so,
damn.
good evening. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
3 quick questions. Do you understand the role of an agent?
Yes, I do.
And do you possess a responsible server certificate?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and you understand that you're responsible for any alcohol violation, even if you're not in the premises at the time it
I do.
happens? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
thanks. Okay, so I'll take a motion on this.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we grant a Class A liquor license and a Class A beer license to Ptaceks Family Market at 1141 South Main Street.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to make sure you open a public hearing? A
Oh,
separate public hearing for this,
oh, I'm so sorry.
just to clarify for the public in case there's somebody that
Oh,
wants to.
sorry, I didn't say anything about that. Okay, that's my fault. So close the council hearing, open a public hearing. Does anybody have any questions or comments about us offering a Class A liquor and Class A beer license to Ptaceks Family Market? No one? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and reopen the council hearing. And I have a first and a second. Is there any questions or comments on this?
Could the clerk please mark me as abstain?
Okay. So first and second, no questions, comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so once again, we'll close the council hearing and open up a public hearing on ordinance 2024-02. This is an ordinance rezoning certain city-owned lands in the Mann Valley Corporate Park to Corporate Park District. Is there anybody in the audience that has anything like to say about this? Okay, we will close the public hearing and reopen up the council hearing. And I will take a motion on this.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the, I believe it's the approve the final plat for the Mann Valley Corporate Park.
Yep.
Second.
Questions or comments?
One.
Oh, so sorry, it's all backwards on here.
If you can take,
Yeah, I'll take so let's rewind here. That's my fault. This is backwards for me. So first we have a resolution approving the final plat for Mann Valley Corporate Park.
I move approval.
Okay, so we have a motion for that. We have a second.
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next we move back up to ordinance 2024. This is an ordinance rezoning certain city-owned lands in the Mann Valley Corporate Park to Corporate Park District. And we had the public hearing and nobody had anything to say, so I will take a motion on that.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next one is ordinance,
Gotta go to public hearing again.
sorry, this is all.
First reading.
So we'll close the council hearing and open up a public hearing for ordinance 2024-02. No, sorry. Ordinance 2024-03, amending the membership of the Plan Commission in section 2.56.010, administration and personnel of the municipal code and this is the first reading. Is there anybody in the audience has anything to say about this? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and reopen the council hearing on this. And is there any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yep.
Mr. Simpson, does this meet state statutes?
Yeah, I can refer that question to the city attorney if you'd like.
I didn't see anything in here that would conflict with 6223. I can take a closer look later, but this is the first reading. It's pretty straightforward.
I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Nope. Move on to consent agenda. Acknowledgement of the following minutes. The library board from 5/6, the plan commission from 5/7, the historic preservation commission from 6/12, the utility advisory board from 5/20, the West Central Wisconsin Biosolids Facility Commission from 5/16, the bid board from 5/15, the board of review from 5/28, the Parks and Rec Advisory Board from 5/15. Next one is a resolution approving the 2023 Compliance Maintenance Annual Report. This resolution would approve the 2023 Compliance Maintenance Annual Report and authorize the submission of the report to Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Next one is a resolution appointing an interim city forester. This would appoint Troy Connolly as the interim city forester. Next one is a resolution approving the 2024 through 2025 Merchant McIntyre Associates Agreement. Next one is a resolution approving the general development plan for Sisu River Falls. Next one is a resolution amending Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Bureau request for noise control exemption and open container for River Falls days. And the last one would be resolution approving Tattersalls Service Retail Outlet. This resolution would allow Tattersall to extend their retail outlet to include service in Heritage Park during the Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Bureau's River Falls Days, July 11th through 13th, and Bacon Bash, September 27th through 28th. Does anybody want to pull anything? Otherwise, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda, items 6A through H and 7 through 12.
Second.
Questions or comments on anything? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next would be a resolution approving a one-year affordable housing extension for TID 5. And this resolution would extend TID 5 for 1 year to use resulting revenue for affordable housing and improve the city's housing stock. And I'll take a motion on this.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt the resolution to extend TID 5 for 1 year to use the resulting revenue for affordable housing and to improve the city's housing stock.
Second.
First and second, questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment.
Yep.
I would ask that staff please start to prepare or work on what we are going to do with those funds and how we can target the goal of affordable housing with those funds. As I've said in the past, I think a pot of money in search of a project is dangerous, so I'd like to see us come up with some direction or some sort of idea. And I will leave it up to staff as to their time frame, but I would like to see it maybe by the end of the year.
Anybody else have anything? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is resolution approving submission of electric rate case to the Public Service Commission. And Josh Schollinger, our Finance Director, is going to give us a little presentation on this.
Right.
I'm just gonna flip this. Perfect. Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. This presentation is just gonna cover the next two resolutions before you concerning an electric and water utility rate case application. They would be two separate applications. And I do want to mention before I get started, I do have Mallory Clevin from WPPI, Eric Granum and Christy DeMaster from Trilogy Consulting all joining us remotely in case there are some questions that go a little bit beyond what I may be able to answer this evening. But just to provide some background, so we last increased our electric utility rates in 2020. That was based on an application that would have been approved and submitted in 2019. The water utility rates were last increased in 2016. That would have been based on a 2015 application. We did have two previous discussions about these rate cases, the most recent of which was on February 27th, 2024 at a joint council and utility advisory board workshop. And then we also discussed this with the utility advisory board independently at one of their meetings on October 16th, 2023. So I actually have this same slide at the end. I'm going to just come back to this at the end, but I do just want to briefly remind everybody at the joint workshop, we did discuss a number of assumptions that we affirmed with you all that we utilized when we went about developing these rate case applications. So again, I will come back to this, but just a reminder. One of those assumptions that we discussed was that growth pays for itself in part. And this is a key city philosophy, so I do want to just touch on this slide again, just as a refresher, a reminder, and for those in the audience and the public. So when we say growth pays for itself, at least in part, we're kind of talking about three main things. One of which is developer-contributed assets are excluded from the Public Service Commission's net investment rate base. So when you look at the value of a utilities assets, you take that portion that's financed by development and you actually pull that out. And then the rate of return, which is a term I'll talk about here in a slide or two, that rate of return is applied to utility financed assets. So when you set your revenues, you're setting those based on a rate of return benchmark that only applies to that utility finance portion. So anything in the community that's developer financed doesn't get included in cost of service studies, rate of return, things like that. The second bucket is tax increment financing. So a current example of this is Mann Valley Corporate Park, where we do contemplate TID number 19 paying debt service for utility infrastructure that's been installed in that corporate park. While we wait for growth to come online in the corporate park, we may need the utilities to make some debt service payments before there's sufficient tax increment revenue available. In that case, we would treat those as interfund loans from the utilities to the tax increment district to be repaid later in the TID's life when there's sufficient tax increment revenue, and we would include interest on those repayments. The third bucket is impact fees and developer financing. So in this case, the impact fees must be used for infrastructure required to serve growth. This reduces reliance on borrowing because we can cash finance a portion of the capital cost, which reduces future interest expenses. And again, that developer financing gets included, or rather subtracted from the value of the utilities assets for rate setting purposes. A recent example of this is Derrick Homes over in the Thompson Heights development, where $445,000 was contributed for water and wastewater capital costs. Just click ahead there. Okay, so then parts of a rate application. I've done a little bit of refresher now, so now we're jumping into the rate application process itself. It's primarily a three-step process. The first part of the process is to determine the revenue requirement for the utility. Simply put, how much revenue does the utility need to achieve that benchmark rate of return as set by the Public Service Commission, which, as I've mentioned in the past, does fluctuate. Currently, it is at 6.2%. So you essentially decide of the utility financed assets, if your goal is to achieve net income that's 6.2% of those assets, where do you need to set your revenues to achieve that? The second step is a cost of service study. This evaluates the revenues by customer category by determining what it costs to serve each customer category served by the utility. And that varies based on usage patterns. There's a lot of methodology. That's part of why we've got the consultants on with us today, is they'd better be able to speak to the breadth and the depth of the methodology. But you're essentially basing these assumptions about the cost to serve the customer categories on usage patterns. And then the third step is the rate design. You want to take the cost to serve those customer categories and set the revenues for each category to achieve cost recovery. So you end up in the neighborhood of 98 to 102% of the cost to serve each customer category being recovered by the rate setting process. So you're trying to set rates to achieve cost recovery and really no more, no less. The second part of the rate design process is deciding how much of the rate structure or revenue you want to get from fixed rates or fixed costs versus volumetric or usage-based costs. I'm going to talk a little bit about that when I get to that assumption slide at the end. So the revenue requirement for the electric utility is about almost $17.2 million in rate-driven revenue, which is 6.01% higher than current rate. So when we talked at the workshop, we were thinking it would be about in that 4 to 6% range, and we're right at about 6%. Now, one thing I do want to point out here is that we are, oh, I can't see my mouse on the screen. If you look at the last column under 2024 proposed rates, the rate of return there is actually 6.5%. So that's something that our consultant has recommended that we seek 6.5% initially with the Public Service Commission. It's very much sort of a negotiated process. And we do believe that ultimately the Public Service Commission will have us come down to that 6.2% rate of return. But if you start high, you'll end up coming down lower. It's kind of that classic negotiation strategy. So that's what our consultant has recommended. That's what we're proposing. And that's where we think it'll be about 6% higher than current rates. For the water utility, it'll be $2.88 million in rate-driven revenue, or 51.43% higher than current rates. So again, we had mentioned it'd be about 40 to 50%. We're at about 51%. Now this is actually based on a 4.5% rate of return. So couple reasons for that with the water utility. First and foremost, we didn't want to go any higher than what you see here in terms of an aggregate increase of 51% over current rates. And reason B is we don't need to in order to achieve, we have other financial policies applicable to our utilities, like 90-day working capital policy. We have revenue debt coverage ratios. If we were to go for a 4.5% rate of return for the water utility, 51% aggregate increase, we would meet those parameters. So we're okay in this case. So then getting into the cost of service study, which is part 2. What we do, and again, this is where the consultants will be able to talk a little bit more in depth about the methodology, but 40,000 foot level, what you're attempting to do is you measure the number of meters by customer category and system demand, which includes peak demand by each category for the purpose of allocating those system costs. So for the electric utility, you look at coincident metering. So you kind of pick a few different points in time where you're at kind of peak demand in the system, and you look at what portion of each customer category is contributing to those points of peak demand. And then you're allocating your costs according to a blended methodology of that, meters by category. And you're doing something very similar with water. You're essentially looking at times of the day where it's peak demand, kind of when the system is most quote unquote stressed, and you're trying to see what customer categories are contributing to those peaks, and you're assigning costs based on that in meters. So that's the cost of service study methodology in a nutshell. And then, of course, the Public Service Commission plays a role in all of this too, because they ensure ratepayers are protected with responsible rate recovery. At the end of the day, we'll submit an application, and then they play their regulatory role in ensuring that ratepayers are protected, it's responsible, it's equitable, things like that. Not only between customer categories, but between all of the regulated utilities across the state. So then the cost of service study, you can see the breakdown here. I'm just going to touch on a couple of these. So for the electric utility, and this is in the memo as well, general service time of day customers would see the largest increase. Now again, this is revenue requirement. So when you see a % change, that doesn't mean every single customer is going to see that. It still depends on individual usage and things like that. But the revenue requirement for general service time of day customers would be increasing by 9.3%, residential time of day by 9.1%, and then general service by 7.89%, followed by residential, then street and yard lighting, so on and so forth. For the water utility, the largest increase is the fire protection service portion of the rates. That's 83.5% increase, followed by irrigation at 66.6%. And then multifamily, residential, and industrial. And again, so all we're doing when you go to do these rate case processes, You're not only increasing the rates, but you're trying to right size. Since the last rate adjustments would have occurred, you've incurred expenses, you've added customers. You're not only increasing rates, but you're trying to right size those rates depending on what it costs to serve the customers you've added and the costs you've incurred since the last one. So then for rate design, there aren't really any grand overarching new philosophies that we're seeking to implement as part of this process. There are a couple electric utility specific customer categories we're adding. And all these are designed to do in talking with our consultant is by adding, for example, a general service 3 customer category. We have a number of customers right now that are arguably overly commingled into the GS2 customer category. And by pulling these apart and creating a new category for them, you're better able to measure costs specific to customers that are currently grouped together but are not necessarily very much alike one another right now. So you can pull them apart, measure those costs, and then set rates for them more appropriately. And then we're also adding a small power time of day or CP1 TOD customer category. And all of this, again, is designed to do, it's a fairly minor adjustment where we're trying to move those customers into better, what we would call better price signaling by setting their pricing based on peak demand during on-peak hours. So that's actually more predictable for them, sends a better price signal, something that our consultant recommended that other utilities that they've done this with recently have also been doing and has been successful. So then the last part of the rate design is the fixed versus volumetric or usage-based cost. So for the electric utility, we're actually decreasing usage-based costs by 2%. And for the water utility, we'd actually be decreasing usage-based revenues by 6%. It's small, it's incremental, but it is kind of the small incremental approach that tends to be most successful with the PSC when you're looking to make this kind of an adjustment based on feedback, again, from our consultants. The idea here is that we want to obviously encourage conservation while recognizing that we have a lot of fixed costs in the ground, above the ground, that are already installed, infrastructure that's critical and necessary to deliver services. And we do want to make sure that we have a revenue structure that allows us to remain financially sustainable and operate and maintain all of the infrastructure that's there. So then getting into average residential bills. So we talked about this at the workshop. For the electric utility, based on average residential usage of 750 kilowatt hours, couple notes here. So it's going to be about a $9 increase per month or 9%. Now that depends on the PCAC or the power cost adjustment clause. So you've got a base rate on your utility bill, and then you've got this PCAC adjustment that fluctuates based on the real costs we're incurring to go buy wholesale power to then provide to customers. That rate fluctuates. In the test year 2024, which is what we're including in our application, we assume, or WPPI has assumed a PCAC slightly higher than what I have. And if that's the case, then customer bills to the proposed rate structure would be increasing by $7 or about 7%. So it's going to be about a $7 to $9 increase, or 7 to 9%. For the water utility, where we don't have anything like this fluctuating thing like PCAC, assuming average usage of 4,000 gallons per month, your average residential bill will increase by $6 per month, or about 34%, with the largest share of the increase coming from that fire charge portion of the bill that I mentioned earlier. So then average residential bills for the electric utilities, to provide some comparisons, under the proposed rate structure, we would be at $110 per month compared to $120 per month for Xcel Energy, or a leading investor-owned utility. For general service customers under the proposed model, we'd be at $141 a month compared to almost $151 a month for Xcel. And then for the water utility, this was information provided by Trilogy Consulting. This is at an average annual residential water bill. So, but this is comparing our utility to similarly situated utilities in Wisconsin. We are currently the lowest on the list. And then after the proposed rates go into effect, if they go into effect, we would still be well into the bottom third of all utilities in the state. So then I do just want to recap the assumptions we talked about at the workshop. So the first was we aim to provide value for quality, reliability, and service. We're not just necessarily aiming to be the cheapest utility. And what we mean when we say quality, reliability, and service is things like 99+% electric reliability. Our average downtime exceeds industry average, so we do get to outages faster than the industry average. Water meets or exceeds all state and federal standards. We want to stay very aggressive on our preventative maintenance, which goes back to the idea that we're not necessarily aiming to be the cheapest, and we want to continue to promote economic development. As I mentioned, new growth pays for itself, at least in part. There are no new programming, rate philosophies, dividends. We are adding 2 new customer categories, but as I mentioned, those are fairly minor adjustments to better align costs with revenues and price signaling. Staff, we will seek to maximize the fixed charge portion of the rate structure. And an example of that with this rate structure being proposed is that usage-based revenues for the electric utility actually dropped by 2%, 6% for water. We didn't actively seek any changes in cost distribution between customer categories. We just simply measured the cost to serve them and we set rates accordingly. We didn't actively seek any changes in that distribution. And then staff intend to maintain volume or time of day discounts where applicable. And the rates we're proposing do that. So for commercial, industrial, and public authority water customers, the rate tier still decreases after 150,000 gallons. That's already the case, and we would just maintain that. And then for time of day off-peak hours for electric customers, those remain lower than if you just utilize the standard rate structure as a customer. That, again, already is the case, and we are just continuing that. So the next steps, and then that'll be it. So if you approve submission of the rate case applications this evening, we are in step 2 of a 7-step process, and we've already been in just these first 2 steps for 3 months now. And from here on to the end, the PSC aims to have rate orders issued within 200 days of submission of the application. During that time, they'll discuss the proposal with us. They may make modifications to it. They reserve the right to do that as the state regulatory agency. That may mean they could require more revenue from the water utility than we're asking for. They could adjust revenues between customer categories, though. When you consider how we've set these, I don't feel that's likely. They certainly could. And then there could be other adjustments they may make. And then eventually they would issue a rate order with an effective date. We would need to adjust our fee schedule, our utility billing system to be updated for that effective date. And then the last point I just want to make is if you do approve submission this evening, you'd certainly be doing so with that understanding that final rates are ultimately determined by the PSC. They are obviously willing to hear any concerns, requests that we have as a city when we submit the application, and our consultants being on with us right now would certainly pass those along when they go to finally click submit. But the PSC, it is called a rate order for a reason, so they may or may not take those into consideration. So with that, I would be glad to answer any questions. Like I said, our consultants are on if they'd be better suited to answer it.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a couple questions?
Let's take a motion first on this.
Oh.
Let's take a motion first on the electric rate.
Make a motion that we approve the resolution for submission of rate case study to the public, to the PSC.
Second. Okay, go ahead.
Just a couple of refresher points I want to just touch base with so the public hears it. First of all, we approved the electric increase. The electric increase was approved in 2020, but we held off on implementation. Is my memory right there?
Approved in 19.
In 19.
Went into effect in 2020.
But we didn't implement that because of COVID and some other things until November of 2020 or something like that?
That's my understanding. That sounds right. Yep.
Okay, all right. So we did delay that. So that was in 2020. We haven't had a water increase. Oh, we're only on electric. I'll ask that next, I guess.
Yeah, you can answer that.
Well, so we haven't had a water increase since 16, so now we're 8 years beyond that. I think the general philosophy from the council standpoint is we waited for a long time with the increase on electric, I believe it was, and then we had a pretty dramatic increase, and we kind of all said, well, we don't want to do that anymore, so let's make sure we're testing these about every 3 to 4 years, so that's what's going on. The other thing is important, everybody's seeing increases in everything else, and providing utilities is no different, but the other thing that's important for the public to understand here is having a good rate of return also helps us with our bond rating when we do need to borrow to put infrastructure in the ground. So it is important that we stay up to speed with these for bond rating purposes as well. I just want to point those things out. Use staff to reaffirm that. Thank you.
May I make a related comment? Yeah, we heard earlier in public comment about, a climate change strategy is a good thing for public entities to do. And part of that is making sure we've got infrastructure that is in good shape and that can withstand stress. So, and I think historically we've done a very good job at that, and that comes with its own expense.
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment. I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank Kevin Westhouse, our water utility, our electric works, and we've worked towards having grade A water as a city and at a great expense. If you look at our cost and effectiveness and efficiency as a city, we ranked number 3 in the lowest amount of water for quite some time. Now we're dealing with inflation, but we're working towards keeping those prices and keeping that grade A water quality at the same time. And I really appreciate the work that goes into this by the city and the council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything? Okay, so I got a first and a second on the electric rate case. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, we'll take a motion on the resolution approving submission of the water rate case to the Public Service Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next go administrator's report. Scott's got anything for us, or anybody's got anything for Scott?
Just a few dates of note, Mayor and Council. July 4th, city offices will be closed. River Falls Days is July 11th to 13th. I don't think we've worked out the parking. I guess I can't communicate the parking changes, but just understand we ask our customers to be patient with us as we try to accommodate events for River Falls Days, July 11th through 13th. If you're looking for more information, you can go to the rfchamber.com site, or you can simply search. I searched today River Falls Days 2024, and it came up. Lots of information about kind of a full slate of activities occurring over the course of the weekend, and so we invite people to come and enjoy their community with one another. July 18th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. will be cookout conversations in Glen Park. July 23rd at 6:30 is our next city council meeting, as the council has adjusted schedules for one meeting per month in the summer. Be happy to take any questions you might have.
Mr. Mayor, I have some questions. I've got about 4 different questions. I'm just kind of go through them first, if that's okay, and they're for Mr. Simpson. And, my questions are regarding the processes we have and transparency for our community. So we had a couple different resignations this last month and whatnot. Kelly Perimeter, Mike Noreen. I understand that when people resign, there's a level of confidentiality that is meant to protect them and the employer, in this case the city. I think it's really important that people can see that there is a process in place that is transparent and communicates well. And we do have processes in place, but I want to make sure people understand that we do have them. That the processes have formal review with more than one staff, which we do have, and that there is an appeals process, which we also have. I don't believe our community is aware of these as it should be, and sometimes that's just lack of awareness where these are listed. So, Mr. Simpson, could you briefly explain both of those two processes? What do they look like? And From my understanding, the appeals process involves the council, and we never had anybody appeal from my understanding. And I have one other question, and that is whether Mike or Kelly ever appealed their resignation to the council. And I got one more too. And do we have a timeline for the sustainability coordinator position, when that will be filled?
Council member, I heard three questions. I think your first one was a two-parter. I'm not sure what the part A was, but I can speak. When you mentioned the word appeal, I think you're probably referring to a formal grievance procedure that we have in our policy, and that is related to the statutes. And that's a policy we put in place after Act 11, where there's some changes in the due process for public employees and their right to bargain. And so then cities put in place a statutorily referenced grievance procedure. I guess I'm not going to speak to any individual employee, but we certainly have that grievance procedures available. It goes through several steps. Most often, the three steps would be for the city administrator, then to a third party, and then to the council.
Are department heads part of that process?
Well, the department heads are the ones recommending any employment action typically. So department heads are the typically, unless it's a direct report of mine, that are making a recommendation for a discipline or a discharge. So they would be they're the step before the grievance.
Okay.
So I'm going to skip your question about specific employees. I'm not going to speak to whether or not they've taken advantage of that, but obviously it's not come to the city council in any step. And then the third, I think, was the timeline for sustainability coordinator. I had a meeting with some community members this morning, and so giving you consistent information with what I gave them. Probably 90 to 180 days till we have position filled. We have some work to do still on what the job description in final will look like, and also then getting it advertised and going through a candidate process. And I think we've had fairly good success recently on most recruitments. So I think 180 days is probably a good estimate. We might be able to beat that, but it just depends on the candidate pool.
Is there a way that maybe we do have this posted somewhere where we could include it in our transparency commitment, where people can see exactly how we operate in the future, perhaps?
I'm not sure I understand that question. Do you mean our personnel policy manual being posted?
The parts of it that the public would be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that it's already available through a web link. I'm not sure. It certainly is available to our employees because that's who it's related to. So I had to think about that, and I guess I would ask. I'll get some advice about what the appropriateness of posting that, but it certainly would be available through public records requests or others. So I don't think there's any reason that we can't make it available if it isn't already available.
I sure appreciate you answering my difficult questions, and I think it's really healthy for the community to hear that we do have these processes and that we do have a background in doing these. So I'd like to see those things more publicly out there in the future so we have more transparency. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything for Scott? Okay, move on to Comptroller's report.
The Comptroller's report for May 2024. General fund revenues through the end of May were $4,861,125, or 35.8% of total budgeted revenues for the year. Revenues in May included $235,316 for the River Falls Rural Fire Association payment, $28,578 from vehicle registration fees, and $16,243 from building permits. Expenditures through the end of May were $5,107,393, or 37.5% of total budgeted expenditures for the year. So as of May 31st, 2024, net expenditures over revenues were $246,269.
Thanks, Diane. Next, consumer confidence report. It was in the packet, and council has any questions about that? Okay, next move on to announcements. We have a couple proclamations to read. The first is for the Parks and Recreation, and Mr. Morissette will read that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm privileged to be serving on the Park and Rec Board, so I'm happy to read this proclamation. Designation of July as Parks and Recreation Month and July 19th as Parks and Recreational Professionals Day. Whereas Parks and Recreation is an integral part of communities throughout this country, including River Falls, Wisconsin, and whereas Parks and Recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental and physical health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being, providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas Parks and Recreation programming and educational activities, such as out-of-school time programming, youth, adult, sports, and environmental camps and clinics, are critical to childhood development. And whereas Parks and Recreation provides services that enrich the lives of its citizens and help make this community a desirable place to live, work, and visit. And whereas the City of River Falls Common Council and the Park and Recreation Advisory Board recognizes that Parks and Recreation field is a diverse and comprehensive system that improves personal, social, environmental, and economic health. And whereas the City of River Falls supports the skilled workers of park and recreational professionals to strengthen community and provide and promote opportunities for healthy living. And whereas the City of River Falls values the essential services that parks and recreational professionals and volunteers perform to provide recreational development, enrichment for our children, youth, and adults, and to ensure our parks and recreational spaces are clean, safe, inclusive, welcoming, and ready to use. Now, therefore, Dan Tolan, Mayor of the City of River Falls, does hereby proclaim the month of July as Park and Recreation Month and July 19th, 2024 as Park and Recreational Professionals Day, given under his hand and sealed the City of River Falls this 25th day of June, 2024.
Thanks. And Ms. Lodine's got a proclamation recognizing ARC's service to our community.
Whereas the Assistant Resource Center, ARC or ARC, began serving the City of River Falls on July 23rd, 2009, as a go-to financial resources for residents experiencing financial insecurity. And whereas ARC has provided critical financial assistance to individuals and families in the areas of utilities, housing, transportation, groceries, and more. And whereas ARC is a 100% volunteer organization committed to helping people in need see a pathway forward through difficult circumstances. And whereas ARC volunteers assisted over 1,000 households in River Falls and Ellsworth in 2023 alone. And whereas ARC board members Ronna Ellis, Client Service Director, Judy Perkins, Secretary, Tammy Pitsy, Member at Large, Lori Rodewald, Treasurer, Sharon Schultz, Chairperson, Cindy Testa, Marketing and Outreach, and Angel Zimmerman, Phone Volunteer Coordinator, along with dozens of additional volunteers, have worked tirelessly to support ARC's mission. And whereas ARC has been a fixture of support, well-being, and outreach in River Falls for 15 years, now therefore Dan Toland, Mayor of River Falls, hereby recognizes the extraordinary crisis intervention service that ARC has provided to this community and wishes to thank the volunteers past and present for the work they have done.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to make one appointment. I'd like to appoint Andrew Singerhouse to the bid board through May of 2026.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we accept your appointment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. That was a nice painful agenda. Thank you. couldn't read,
struggled.
I couldn't read anything.
We gotta go back to 2 a month just to keep you up to speed.
I couldn't read a thing.
Well, the liquor license thing really tripped you up.
Oh, it just, my God, I about had a heart attack.